Staff Sergeant Do Hyun Park hated night patrol. The cold wind cut through his uniform as he walked along the fence line of the military base near the DMZ. His flashlight beams swept across the ground, creating moving shadows in the darkness. The stars above him shone brightly in the clear Korean night sky. Do Hyun checked his watch. 2:30 a.m. Just 3 more hours until his shift ended. He touched the rifle hanging from his shoulder, a habit he had developed during his 6 years in the ROK U.S. Combined Forces Command. Something wasn't right. Do Hyun stopped walking and turned off his flashlight. The usual night sounds, crickets, distant machinery, and the soft hum of the bass had gone silent. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. A blue light appeared above the trees. At first, Do Hyun thought it was a helicopter from the base. But helicopters didn't hover silently, and they certainly didn't glow blue. He reached for his radio to report the strange light. The radio crackled with static. Do Hyun tried to change channels, but every frequency was dead. His phone showed no signal either. Years of military training kicked in. He needed to get back to base and report this unusual activity. As he turned to run, the blue light grew brighter. The air around him began to sparkle, like tiny ice crystals floating in the wind. Do Hyun's boots suddenly felt heavy, as if they were stuck in deep mud. He tried to move, but his whole body was frozen in place. The light became blinding. Do Hyun felt his feet leaving the ground. His stomach turned as he started floating upward. The base below him grew smaller and smaller. He wanted to shout, but no sound came from his throat. Through the blue light, he saw something massive above him. It looked like a ship, but unlike anything he had ever seen in his military career. The surface was smooth and dark, with patterns that seemed to move like oil on water. It had to be at least as big as an aircraft carrier, maybe bigger. As he got closer to the ship, Do Hyun noticed other objects floating up with him: rocks, small branches, and even a lost baseball cap from the base. Whatever force was pulling him up didn't care what it caught. His military training told him to observe everything. Even as fear tried to take over, Do Hyun forced himself to memorize details about the ship. The bottom had several large circular openings, glowing with the same blue light that had trapped him. The hull seemed to be made of a material that changed color slightly as he watched. The blue light suddenly turned green. Do Hyun felt a sharp pain in his head, like brain freeze from eating ice cream too fast. His vision started to blur. He fought to stay awake, knowing that whatever happened next would be important. The last thing Do Hyun saw before passing out was a figure standing in an opening in the ship. It was tall and thin, with a head that seemed too large for its body. Its skin had a metallic shine, like polished copper. The creature tilted its head as it watched him float closer, like a scientist studying an interesting bug. Then everything went black. When base security found Do Hyun's abandoned patrol route the next morning, all they discovered were his footprints in the dirt, ending in a perfect circle of scorched grass. His rifle lay on the ground, its metal parts twisted as if they had melted and cooled again. In the dirt nearby, something had written strange symbols that no one could read. Staff Sergeant Do Hyun Park had vanished without a trace, becoming another mysterious disappearance in the DMZ. But unlike the others, he wasn't lost. He was about to show an alien race why taking a trained Earth soldier was a very, very bad idea. Do Hyun woke up with a terrible headache. He lay on a cold metal floor in a room with bright white walls. The air smelled clean, too clean, like a hospital. His uniform was gone, replaced by a gray jumpsuit with strange symbols on the chest. As his eyes adjusted to the light, he noticed he wasn't alone. In the corner sat a woman in the same gray jumpsuit. She watched him with careful eyes, the way a soldier watches for danger. "You're the new one," she said in Korean. "I'm Ha-won Lee, former civilian pilot. Been here 3 months." She spoke in short, quiet sentences, like someone used to being listened to. Do Hyun sat up slowly, fighting off dizziness. Staff Sergeant Do Hyun Park, ROKUS Combined Forces. Where are we? They call themselves the Voth. This is their arena ship. Ha-1 moved closer, keeping her voice low. They take beings from different worlds and make them fight. They think it's research, maybe entertainment too. A deep sound, like a giant bell, rang through the room. Ha-1 tensed. They're coming. Remember, don't show them everything you can do. Not yet. The wall slid open. Two tall creatures walked in, their copper-colored skin gleaming under the lights. They looked down at Do-hyun with large black eyes. One held up a device that glowed green. Specimen 2749, stand, the device translated in a flat voice. Do-hyun stood, his military training taking over. He kept his face blank while studying the aliens. They were about 8 feet tall, with long arms that ended in 4-fingered hands. Their movements were smooth, like dancers. Physical condition acceptable. One Voth said, "Begin combat assessment." The other Voth pressed something on the wall. A door opened, showing a large round room. Do-hyun could see other creatures in similar jumpsuits watching from behind clear walls. "Enter the assessment arena," the translator said. Do-hyun walked into the round room. The floor was made of some soft material that felt like sand but wasn't. Different objects were scattered around, poles, blocks, and things he didn't recognize. Ha-1's voice came from behind him. "They want to see how you fight. But remember what I said." A screen appeared in the air above. It showed pictures of Do-hyun, his height, weight, and other measurements. Next to it was a picture of another creature, something that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. The Voth spoke again. "Human specimen will engage in combat assessment with juvenile Krath warrior. Combat ends at submission or unconsciousness. Death is not permitted at assessment level." Do-hyun heard a door open on the other side of the arena. The bear lizard creature walked out. It was twice his size, with scales that shined like armor and claws as long as his fingers. "Begin assessment," the translator said. The bear lizard roared and charged. Do-hyun waited until the last second, then stepped aside like he was avoiding a drunk fighter outside a bar. The creature crashed into the wall behind him. As the fight continued, Do-hyun remembered Ha-1's warning. He fought just well enough to stay alive, making his moves look clumsy and lucky. He let the creature think it was winning. In the observation area, one Voth turned to another. Specimen shows typical human response patterns. Reliance on evasion indicates poor combat capability. Recommends standard conditioning program. Ha-1 watched from behind a clear wall, hiding a small smile. She had seen Do-hyun's eyes during the fight. They were the eyes of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The Voth had just made their first mistake. They thought they were testing him. They didn't realize he was testing them. During his first week on the alien ship, Do-hyun learned to see patterns. The Voth did everything on a strict schedule. They'd brought food at the same times each day. They changed the arena's layout at specific hours. Even their guard patrols moved like clockwork. They think being predictable means being advanced, Ha-1 explained as they sat in their cell. She drew small diagrams on the floor with water from their drinking cups, erasing them quickly after showing them to Do-hyun. "Look at how they build their doors. Each one opens the same way, uses the same code pattern." Do-hyun nodded, watching a guard walk past their cell. "Military bases use patterns too, but we change them often. Patterns that never change become weaknesses." During their daily conditioning sessions, Do-hyun paid attention to everything. He noticed how the Voth's machines worked. He saw which buttons they pressed, which lights turned on, what sounds came before different actions. The aliens never tried to hide these things. Why would they? To them, humans were just simple creatures who could never understand their advanced technology. One day, while practicing in the training area, Do-hyun met another human. The man was shorter than him, with quick eyes that noticed everything. He introduced himself as Jae-ho Kim. "I worked in cybersecurity before they took me. Jiho said quietly as they lifted weights together. The Voth don't know that. They think I'm just another test subject. What have you learned? Du Hyun asked, keeping his voice casual in case anyone was listening. Jiho smiled slightly. Their computer systems are like their buildings, all connected, all following the same rules. One door isn't much different from another door. One computer isn't much different from another computer. Do Hyun understood what Jiho wasn't saying. If you learned how to open one door, you could open many doors. If you learned one computer, you could use many computers. Later that night, Ha-won shared more information. She had been watching the arena fights carefully. The Voth only use certain types of weapons in certain ways. They never change their fighting styles. They think they've perfected everything. So why would they need to change? Do Hyun thought about his military training. In the army, they learned that perfect plans often fail in real battles. Good soldiers had to adapt, to think differently when things went wrong. The Voth didn't understand this. They thought their way was the only way. Over the next few days, Do Hyun started training differently. When the Voth weren't watching, he practiced moving in ways they wouldn't expect. He learned how their training equipment could be used in ways they hadn't planned for. Each day, he remembered more of his military training that could help them. They think we're getting stronger in the ways they want, Ha-won said, watching Do Hyun practice. They don't see that we're learning their weaknesses. Even the food became part of their planning. Do Hyun noticed that certain meals made him stronger, while others helped him think more clearly. He started trading with other prisoners to get the right combinations. At night, lying in his cell, Do Hyun thought about his base back on Earth. His commanders had always taught him that knowledge was as important as strength. Now he understood why. The Voth were stronger, but they didn't know how to think like soldiers. They didn't understand that humans never stopped learning, never stopped adapting. Every day, the aliens recorded Do Hyun's progress in their tests. Their reports showed numbers getting better, strength increasing, fighting skills improving. But they missed the most important thing. They were teaching their prisoner exactly how to beat them. The day of Do Hyun's first real arena fight arrived 3 weeks after his capture. The Voth had chosen his opponent carefully, a creature they called a Drakkar warrior. It stood 3 times taller than Do Hyun and had skin like rock. Remember your training, Ha-won said as they watched the Drakkar in the preparation area. They expect you to fight like an animal. Show them just enough to win, nothing more. Do Hyun nodded, studying the arena through the clear wall. Today's layout had several raised platforms and deep pits. Poles of different lengths stuck out from the walls. Metal objects that looked like broken machine parts lay scattered across the ground. The Voth announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Today's match. Human Specimen 2749 versus Drakkar Warrior Krell. Combat continues until submission or unconsciousness. Weapons may be created from arena materials, beginning in 3 time units. Do Hyun walked into the arena calmly. He could hear the other prisoners watching from their cells. The Drakkar entered from the opposite side, its footsteps shaking the ground. It roared, showing rows of sharp teeth. Human Specimen appears unsuitable for combat, one Voth said to another in the observation room. Probability of survival, less than 20%. The signal to begin sounded. The Drakkar charged forward, just like all its kind did. Do Hyun had watched them fight before. They always attacked the same way, straight ahead, full power, no thinking. Instead of running, Do Hyun picked up a long metal pole. The Drakkar reached for him with massive hands. At the last second, Do Hyun dropped and rolled, using the pole to trip the larger creature. The Drakkar crashed into one of the platforms, sending pieces of it flying. Interesting, said a Voth observer. Specimen shows tactical thinking. Do Hyun kept moving. He knew he couldn't match the Drakkar's strength, but he didn't need to. In the army, they had trained to fight larger, stronger opponents. The key was to use their size against them. Each time the Drakkar charged, Do Hyun led it toward a trap. He jumped between platforms, making the creature follow him higher and higher. The Voth watched with growing interest as their primitive human specimen showed unexpected skill. Combat pattern does not match previous assessments, one Voth noted. Subject appears to be using planned strategies. The turning point came when the Drakkar jumped to the highest platform. Du Hyun had been waiting for this. He threw pieces of metal at the creature's feet, making it step backward. The platform, weakened by earlier impacts, started to crack. Weight distribution indicates imminent structural failure, a Voth said. The human has. Before the alien could finish, the platform collapsed. The Drakkar fell into one of the deep pits. Du Hyun quickly used his pole to knock loose pieces of the platform onto the creature, trapping it. The Drakkar roared in fury but couldn't move. After trying to break free for several minutes, it made the sound that meant surrender. The arena fell silent. The Voth observers looked at each other in confusion. Their data had predicted an easy victory for the Drakkar. Instead, the human had won without throwing a single punch. Match concluded, the announcer said. Winner, human specimen 2749. In her cell, Ha-1 smiled. The Voth still didn't understand what they were seeing. This wasn't just a fight, it was a message. Earth's warriors didn't need superior strength or advanced weapons. They had something more dangerous, the ability to think, adapt, and use everything around them as a weapon. The Voth had just learned their first lesson about human soldiers. They would soon learn many more. 1 week after Du Hyun's victory over the Drakkar, things began to change on the ship. The Voth gave him more time in the training area, thinking he needed practice to become a better fighter. They didn't realize they were giving him exactly what he wanted, time to meet other humans. During morning training, Du Hyun met Sun Mi Kang, who had been a combat medic before her capture. She taught others how to treat injuries using the strange plants in the ship's food supplies. Some of these alien plants work better than our medicines, she whispered while showing him how to make healing paste. The Voth think we're just eating them. In the afternoon sessions, Tae-won Choi, a former Special Forces soldier, joined their group. He knew ways to fight that the Voth had never seen. Military training isn't just about being strong, he explained quietly as they exercised. It's about working together, thinking ahead, being ready for anything. Jae-ho spent his time watching the ship's computer screens during cleaning duty. The Voth never changed their passwords. He told Du Hyun during their rest period. They think we can't understand their numbers. But I've been counting the sounds their doors make when they type codes. Each sound is a different number. Ha-1 had been mapping the ship in her head. During mealtimes, she would tell stories about her pilot training, but hidden in these stories were details about the ship's layout. The engine room is just like a plane's engine, she said one day. It needs fuel, air, and a way to start. Take away any of these, and nothing flies. Do Hyun used his time in the arena to test the Voth's weapons and defenses. Each fight taught him something new about their technology. He learned that their energy barriers couldn't stop slow-moving objects. He discovered their stun weapons had a 3-second delay between shots. The other prisoners began to notice the humans working together. A tall blue creature that looked like a tree showed Du Hyun how to communicate without the Voth's translation devices. A small, quick alien that reminded him of a cat helped them pass messages between different parts of the ship. The Voth saw all this activity but didn't understand it. They thought the humans were just copying each other, like animals learning new tricks. In their reports, they wrote about group behavior patterns and social learning. They didn't realize they were watching military training in action. Humans show increased cooperation, one Voth scientist noted. Recommend studying pack behavior development. Every night, after the lights dimmed, the humans shared what they had learned. Sun Mai taught them about healing. Tae-won showed them new ways to fight. Jae-ho explained how the ship's systems worked. Ha-1 described escape routes and hiding places. Do Hyun listened to everything, remembering his commander's words from basic training. A soldier's best weapon is his mind. A soldier's greatest strength is his team. The Voth had made three big mistakes. First, they thought humans were simple creatures. Second, they'd put trained soldiers together. Third, they gave them time to plan. Soon, they would learn just how dangerous these mistakes were. The day everything changed started like any other on the Voth ship. Du Hyun was preparing for his regular arena match when he noticed something different. The Voth scientists were excited, their copper skin gleaming more brightly than usual as they moved quickly around the preparation area. "Something's wrong," Ha-1 said through the cell barrier. "I heard them talking about a special demonstration for important visitors." Commander Thal, the lead Voth researcher, stood in the observation room. Next to him were three taller Voth wearing decorated armor. Their skin had golden patterns that showed their high rank. "Today we will demonstrate the combat potential of Earth specimens," Thal announced. "This human has shown unusual tactical ability. We will test its limits." Do Hyun entered the arena, immediately noticing changes. The usual scattered equipment was missing. The platforms were gone. The arena was completely empty, just a flat circle with high walls. The door on the far side opened. A Drakkar warrior walked out, bigger than any Do Hyun had fought before. Then a second door opened, and another Drakkar appeared. A third door opened. "This is not right," Sun Mai said from her viewing cell. "The arena rules say 1 against 1. The three Drakkar warriors formed a triangle around Do Hyun. Each one carried a shock staff, weapons that were never allowed in regular matches. In the observation room, the visiting Voth watched with interest. "Begin combat assessment," Commander Thal ordered. The Drakkar attacked together. Do Hyun dodged the first shock staff, rolled under the second, but the third caught his arm. Pain shot through his body. He stumbled but kept moving. In the cells, the other humans watched in anger. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution show for the Voth leaders. "They're breaking their own rules," Ta-1 said, his hands gripping the cell barrier. Jai-Ho stood very still, his eyes fixed on the arena's control panel. Years of cybersecurity work had taught him to notice patterns. Every time a shock staff hit, the arena's power levels changed. Do Hyun was fighting for his life. His military training helped him survive, but he couldn't attack. He could only dodge and run. The Drakkar were herding him into a corner. That's when Ha-1 saw it. The Voth were so focused on the fight that they didn't notice the other humans passing signals between cells. Sun Mai had her hands on the medical cabinet's lock. Tai-1 was showing others how to turn cleaning tools into weapons. Jai-Ho's fingers were moving, counting the power surges. In the arena, a shock staff finally caught Do Hyun squarely in the chest. He fell hard. The Drakkar moved in for the final strike. Commander Thal turned to his visitors. "As you can see, even tactical humans have their limits." But Do Hyun wasn't finished. As he lay on the ground, his eyes met Ha-1's across the arena. She nodded slightly. All their preparation, all their planning. It had been for a moment like this. The Voth had made their biggest mistake. They thought they were breaking the human spirit. Instead, they had given Earth's warriors exactly what they needed, a reason to stop hiding their true strength. Do Hyun smiled as he got to his feet. The real fight was about to begin. As Do Hyun faced the three Drakkar warriors, a high-pitched sound filled the arena. The Voth didn't notice it at first. The tone was just at the edge of their hearing. But Jai-Ho had discovered that when enough shock staffs hit at once, they created power surges in the ship's systems. He had been counting the surges, waiting for the right pattern. The arena's lights flickered. Commander Thal turned to his control panel, but nothing worked. In the cells, locks clicked open one by one. Jai-Ho's understanding of the ship's computers was paying off. Every surge had helped him crack another code. Now, Ha-1's voice rang out. The humans moved with perfect coordination, just as they had practiced in their exercise sessions. Sun Mai ran to the medical cabinet, grabbing the healing supplies she had identified. Tai-1 led a group to the weapons storage, using the cleaning tools they had secretly modified. The Voth guards reached for their weapons, but they were too slow. Months of watching their movements had taught the humans exactly how they would react. Before the aliens could raise their shock staffs, Taiwan's team had already disabled them using the weak points they had discovered during training. In the arena, Du Hyun made his move. The Drakkar warriors were strong, but they only knew one way to fight. Du Hyun had been teaching the other humans about military tactics, how to work together, how to use an enemy's strength against them. Now he used those same tactics himself. He rolled under one Drakkar's legs, causing it to shock another with its staff. The third Drakkar swung at him, but hit the arena wall instead. The shock bounced back through its weapon, stunning it. Du Hyun grabbed a fallen shock staff and disabled the controls, just as Jeho had shown him. "The specimens are escaping," Commander Thal shouted. But the visiting Voth leaders were already trapped in the observation room. Ha-1 had memorized the ship's layout during her cleaning duties. She knew which doors to lock, which corridors to block. The other prisoners watched in amazement as the humans moved like a single team. Each person knew their job. Each group had its mission. This wasn't just a riot. It was a military operation. "Security systems failing," a Voth guard reported. "The humans understand our computers." Jeho smiled as he worked at a control panel. The Voth's biggest weakness was thinking their technology was too advanced for humans to understand. They had never changed their codes, never updated their systems. Sun Mai organized medical teams, using her combat medic training to help injured prisoners. Taiwan's groups secured different sections of the ship, using the fighting techniques they had practiced in secret. Ha-1 coordinated everything, using her knowledge of the ship to direct people where they needed to go. Commander Thal watched in disbelief as his perfect research station fell to creatures he had thought were simple test subjects. The humans weren't just fighting. They were taking control of the entire ship, section by section, deck by deck. "How is this possible?" one of the visiting Voth leaders asked. "They're supposed to be primitive." The answer came from Du Hyun, who now stood at the arena's control panel. "You forgot something important," he said through the translation system. "On Earth, we train our soldiers to think, to adapt, to work together. You taught us about your ship, your weapons, your computers. Now we're teaching you about human warfare." The ship, once a prison, was becoming something else. Proof that Earth's warriors were more dangerous than any alien race had imagined. 6 hours after the uprising began, the humans had full control of the Voth ship. Commander Thal and the visiting leaders sat in what had been their own command center, now guarded by former prisoners. The Voth waited nervously, expecting revenge for their months of cruel experiments. But Du Hyun had other plans. He stood before the ship's main communication screen, wearing his recovered military uniform. Ha-1 and Jeho worked at the controls nearby, using their combined knowledge to connect with the Voth homeworld. "Your people need to understand something about humans," Du Hyun said to Commander Thal. "We're not just good at fighting. We know when not to fight too." The screen lit up, showing a room full of senior Voth leaders. Their golden patterned skin glowed as they saw their research ship controlled by their former test subjects. Du Hyun stepped forward and spoke clearly, letting the translation system carry his words. "I am Staff Sergeant Du Hyun Park of Earth's Combined Forces Command. Your people took us from our world, thinking we were simple creatures to study. Today, we proved you wrong. But we're not here for revenge." Sun Mi joined him at the screen. She had been treating injured Voth guards with the same care she showed the former prisoners. "We could have hurt your people like they hurt us," she said. "Instead, we chose to show mercy. That's also part of being human." The Voth leaders watched in silence as Ta-1's team brought in boxes of research data. "Your scientists recorded everything they learned about us," Ta-1 explained. "Now it's time for you to learn the most important thing. Humans are not your enemies unless you make us enemies." Jeho had found something interesting in the ship's computers. He showed star maps on another screen. "Your ships have taken people from 12 different worlds," he said. "We want them all returned home. No more kidnapping. No more forced fights. And if we refuse? One of the Voth leaders asked. HFY stepped forward. Then we keep this ship, she said. We've learned how it works. We've learned about your worlds. Do you really want humans exploring space with a reason to fight you? The Voth leaders spoke among themselves. They had thought humans were primitive because they weren't as strong as Drakkar warriors or as technologically advanced as the Voth. Now they understood their mistake. True strength wasn't just about muscles or machines. Commander Thal watched his former prisoners with new eyes. They had beaten his people not through superior force, but through teamwork, intelligence, and adaptation. And now, when they could take revenge, they chose peace instead. We agree to your terms, the Voth leaders finally said. All captured beings will be returned to their homeworlds. We will end our combat research program. Do-hyun nodded. Then we'll help you repair any damage we caused during the uprising. Let this be the start of a better understanding between our peoples. As the humans began working with their former captors to organize the journey home, Commander Thal made a new entry in his research log. Final conclusion. Earth's warriors are dangerous not because they are strong, but because they are wise. They know when to fight, how to fight, and most importantly, when to stop fighting. We did not just lose our ship today. We gained something more valuable. Knowledge of a species that could become either our greatest enemy or our strongest ally. The choice, we now understand, is ours.